Well, hello there, HW here for Tone Junkie TV. I have been getting so many questions. HW, how do you adjust profiles in Profile Pack 1? How do you adjust profiles from other people? How do you get more chime? How come it sounds good with this guitar and it's too dark with this guitar? How are you adjusting the treble? How are you doing all this stuff? I want to answer all of those questions, and I want to tell you I think there's a ton of misconceptions out there about the Kemper. First things first, everything that I'm going to say today is very much applicable to the Tone Junkie profiles, and today we're actually going to be using one that is about to be released in about a week from the time I'm making this video. It's actually going to be a whole profile pack seeking to capture the sounds of Benson amps, a Benson Monarch and a Benson Chimera. And those are brilliant, brilliant amps, and it's going to be part of the Bend Sun profile pack from Tone Junkie, available at tonejunkiestore.com. Okay, shameless plug out of the way. Whoever you use, whether it's Tone Junkie, Michael Britt, whether it's Mix Berlin, Sinmic, Tone Hammer, it doesn't matter. Use anybody you like. First things first, let's look at the front of the Kemper. Input, 4 stops. Here's your amplifier, your EQ, your cabinet. Here's your then 4 post effects and your output. See this EQ right here? This EQ corresponds to these knobs down here. Here's the first thing I want to say. This in no way models or behaves like the EQ on your amplifier. It just doesn't. And let's just think about this logically for a second. How many amps don't even have a mid control? How many amps have a bass and a treble and they kind of interact and then there's a cut? How about every AC style circuit out there? When the Kemper is profiling, it sends in 3 signals, one targeting bass, middle, and high. It's the known input it sends to the amp, it listens back, creates the profile in about 40 seconds. Really, profiling is about perfect capture. It's about capturing that amp well, and it's about just knowing a little bit of what you're doing with the Kemper. It's a big misconception that you should be treating this EQ this way, because the Kemper can't possibly know how your EQ was going to act. It doesn't know what frequency is controlled on the bass knob of that AC30 any more than the bass knob of that Fender Twin. It doesn't know that you don't have a mid knob. This EQ is fixed on some frequencies. It's fixed to behave the same way. It's just the Kemper EQ. You could almost think of it as like a combination, an amalgamation of your amp's EQ and the mic preamp EQ, or maybe even the board's EQ. It's an EQ that goes before the cabinet. The reason that's important is when you start to change these a little bit too much, you start to get sounds that don't sound like the amp. Now that's fine, and that's fine to do, but let me tell you where you should start. Right here is that Benson profile. It was not made using this guitar. It was made using a very different guitar. It was made using my a P90 guitar, and it's a guitar that I choose purposefully because there is a control here that I want to show you. Here's the sound of it by itself on the neck humbucker. It's very muddy, it's not the way it should sound. Here's on the bridge. It sounds dark. It sounds a little bit muddy. It sounds just not very clear. It doesn't sound bad. I just would prefer a little more like chime on cleans, right? Let's jump in here. Hold down the amplifier section, and we get a whole bunch of choices here to choose from. But the most important control on the Kemper has to be the definition control. Has to be. This is set at 5. It's set at 5, and this is only one of 3 parameters in this amplifier section that the Kemper assigns a value to when it profiles. All the rest are at 0. All the rest modify the profile, but definition, tube bias, and tube shape are all assigned when it's listening to the profile and creating it. It estimates by its own metrics that the definition of this on whatever scale it's using is 5. Now I choose a guitar that usually comes out about 5. The reason I do that is I want to leave you plenty of room because this is basically a master EQ, and it's the closest thing we have on the Kemper to going back, being in the room with the profiler, and adjusting the amplifier settings. So for this guitar, I want to make it brighter, so I'm going to increase the definition. And what it's going to do is change the overall EQ to something that, to me, mimics the sound of that amplifier having the EQ changed in the room. I'm going to roll this up to 6.8. So it's a change of 1.8, from 5 to 6.8. And now that muddy sound has come out like this. added a lot of that high end back. There's still a good amount of bass. I mean, it sounds good now. So anyway, this guitar is a guitar that a lot of people are going to use. It's a Les Paul type guitar, and you may be wondering, hey, how come I got this profile and it sounds a little boomy? Well, this is what the first thing you should do is come over here, check the definition. I'm going to roll that definition up. Now, power sag, I'm not going to get into that, but basically it's more of a feel thing. Think orange, vintage orange amp. Think Supro. There's so much compression and sag, we call it, that happens in the tube rectifier stage of the amplifier, and it basically it's a feel thing, and it kind of adds to the bloom of the note. It doesn't make a huge difference when we're playing clean profiles. It makes a much bigger difference when we're playing dirty profiles. If you're playing really high gain, you might bring that sag down to get a lot of that attack and definition back. If you're playing sort of just broken up, like Jimmy Page, kind of classic rock, it's a great tool. Let's jump over here, pick. I'm not going to get into that. It does a lot more at high gain than it does at clean. Compressor. There actually is a compressor in here. It's basically a compressor effect put onto the amplifier, and it's inside the profile. It's inside the amplifier section. And what you're going to notice is myself and some other famous Nashville guys tend to run this about 1 or 1.5. All the Tone Junkie stuff is going to have that between 1 and 2, and it's just wherever we felt like it really sat well. So let me show you what that sounds like. Here is no compressor at all. Here's the compressor about 3.5. It's very clear in this room as I'm monitoring through this Friedman cab, but I hope it comes through. I'm not sure you're going to be able to pick that up totally on a cell phone or something, but you could hear it grabbing that note and pulling it. Now, it's supposed to replicate the sort of compression that happens on an amplifier, and I'm sure it does that, but it's just something to be aware of. I notice a lot of people have their cleans set up to have a compressor come on automatically, and I've even heard people comment about the Tone Junkie Profile Pack, which you can get at tonejunkistore.com. Okay, that's enough. I've even heard people say, hey, this profile is so nice, I don't even need a compressor in front of it. And I always think, oh, that's because there actually is a slight light compressor on already. It's just in a very natural way in here, and it's very light, 1 or 1.5 here. It's just enough to sort of give you a little bit of the feel of the amp in the room back without really changing the tone or feeling like there's a compressor on. In fact, I would bet that everybody who has bought the Tone Junkie Profile Pack, unless you knew about this setting, you had no idea there was any compression happening on those clean profiles. And why would you? It's so subtle, it feels natural. But it's one of those things I've never gone past 3 and not hated it. Let me show you what it sounds like when you do go pretty high. It's ridiculous. It is just a ridiculous control when you put it that high. Okay, so I'm going to leave it down here, and that's something to note. Now, once I'm done there, I'm going to go to page 2, and here's clarity. So here's my settings right now. I think it sounds really good. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of clarity. I'll go to 3 just so you can hear it really well. I hope you can hear that. On a cell phone, I think that might get lost, but if you got some monitors or cans on, or even some in-ears, you can hear it. Here's no clarity. Here's the clarity up about 3.5. It's a cool parameter. It's a very cool parameter. I think it adds a little bit of just chime, and it's very nice. Okay, so moving on, that's where you should be starting. You've got to start at that amplifier block. Now that I'm back here, I might say, okay, well, It's a little bassy. Maybe I just want a little chimier kind of thing. I want to play in the middle position, or maybe I want my neck to be kind of my main tone or something. I don't know what you do. And then I'm going to roll up the presence or roll up the treble a little bit. And maybe I'll back off just to 1 or 2 clicks on the mid-range, and I come out with a sound like this. And it sounds great. And it sounds good on the neck too, right? Now, this is an amp on 1. It's not the profile that's my favorite out of this new Benson pack, but it's the cleanest this amp gets because it gets going really fast. So we gave you a profile of the amp at 1. The next one is, the amp at 2, and then 3.5, and then, kind of goes up from there. But anyway, I would want more gain out of this. I see people doing this a lot. They find a profile they like and they go, I just want a little more gain. Okay, that's fine. Let's add a little bit of gain here. Sounds good to me. Let's add a little more gain. What? What just happened? I literally just went from right here oh, okay. See, you didn't see that, but I actually activated the metal zone that I have here. No, I'm kidding. I didn't activate a metal zone, but this is ridiculous. Now, I want you to remember this. Look at this setting on the gain knob. Okay, that's where I've got it. I went from number 1 on this amp. My cleanest profile is going to be in this Benson pack of the Benson Butterfly, which is modeling the Benson Monarch. It's right there. It's amplifier with a metal zone, right? Now, I want you to hear this same amp actually profiled on 10. So actually profiled on 10 is going to be Butterfly 6. And just to make it fair, I'm going to adjust the adjust the definition here and stuff for a minute. And try and get very similar settings. So what I want you to hear is how different the Kemper added gain is from the real amp. Okay, let's go back. The Kemper just doesn't know what your amp's going to do until it does it. The Kemper can capture your sound at that moment. It can capture the amp at that setting, but we can't ask it to be a modeler. If you want a modeler, go get a modeler, but you didn't buy a modeler. You bought the Kemper, and the Kemper is amazing for what it does. I really, please, I implore you, leave the gain alone. Find profiles that have great capture, that have the gain right where you want them, and if anything, add some gain with maybe an added pedal or a boost. I want to say this. I think you can subtract 3 to maybe 4 clicks and still get a pretty good sound. I think you could subtract about 3 is where I'd be comfortable saying, 3 to 4, but I'd lean towards 3. I would not add more than 2 blips on this little gain dial. It just changes too much. When I set up a performance, might have a profile, and then I might want to put a tube screamer in front of it, and I might just still, even though I have the tube screamer there anyway, I might have the tube screamer set clean, I might bump up the gain just 1 blip, and then put the tube screamer in front and really get it going. But 1 blip isn't going to kill you. 1 blip can sound great. 2 blips isn't going to kill you, can sound great. Adding 3 and 4 blips of gain, I just don't really... It starts to get away from the amp. Now, if it sounds great to you, go ahead and do it. But I'm just letting you know, kind of best practice. I don't touch the gain when we put out a profile pack. or anything we profile, I don't touch the gain. And you'll notice all these are usually right there. I may have a little bit of adjustment to the definition, and I may just add a little bit of clarity, because every room you're in sounds a little bit different. So when I can monitor direct, I compare like to like and hear other profiles that I've done and try to keep everything fairly consistent. Another thing is this, I'll just add this, loudness. Don't be fooled. Some profiles out there are loud. And all I would say to that is, this does nothing to the tone. This is just a volume control. It's a sub-volume from the master. The master is the overall output. This is the volume of that preset. It does nothing to the tone. That is in no way like turning up, your amp or something, and here's the gain, that's the volume. You crank this and lower this to get a clean tone. That's how an amp works. It's not really how the Kemper works. So I hope it's helpful. I hope you kind of understand what I'm saying. I hear a lot of stuff about bandpass filters and cutting the highs and cutting the lows. I'm going to do a future video about that. I think there's some... I think people are trying to solve a problem. They're trying to put a Band-Aid on a different kind of problem. And I know me personally, I have basically the same performance, and I just dialed it in during practice one day, and it sounds killer, and I've slowly just made little adjustments to it. I play that live with the band, and I don't play it at my house. Because I know if I play it at my house, I'm going to start making adjustments to it. Anyway, I'm going to get in that in another video. That's going to be the next video. But I hope this has been helpful. I hope you can take the profiles that you have, whether it be the Tone Junkie profiles, or Michael Britt stuff, or Mix Berlin, or Sin Mix, or Tone Hammer, whether it be stuff that you've profiled yourself with you, whether it be something your friends gave you, or from the Rig Exchange. I hope that you can take these and sort of these tips and how I approach this and adjust accordingly. I can make this work with any guitar. I just grabbed a different guitar and I brought the definition down and I've added some clarity. I made these little adjustments right here, and I just wanted to show you the same profile with a little different adjustments to those amplifier sections in the front. Can also have a beautiful sound with this same profile. I've been HW. You have been watching Tone Junkie TV on YouTube or Facebook. Later.